Hello and welcome. Welcome to Reawakening the Sacred Self, finding the way back to our ancestral soul, where we have gathered together Indigenous elders, wisdom keepers, spiritual teachers, healers, visionaries, and inspirational speakers to share their wisdom and insights as to how we can live a spiritual life that also enhances and strengthens our relationship with Mother Earth, who is the guardian of our ancestral soul. My name is Frances Billinghurst. I'm your host and creatrix of this event, and I'm coming to you from Kaurna country, where the Kaurna people of the Adelaide Plains are the traditional custodians of this land. Simani Naupati, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining me. I am delighted to welcome Anique Radiant Heart. Welcome, Anique.
Welcome and thank you, Frances, for having me. I'm very happy to be here.
And I'm very delighted to have you joining me for this event. Now, for anybody who is not familiar with her work, Anique is a high priestess of the Temple of the Global Goddess, which is based in Maitland, New South Wales, Australia. She's a goddess scholar, a sacred singer-songwriter, the author of Chanting the Chakras, a way to the goddess through energetic use of voice, as well as the 33 teachings of Kuan Yin, one goddess very close to our own heart. Anique is also an internationally acclaimed spiritual teacher and a much loved, not to mention highly respected wise crone within the international goddess community. Anique has been celebrating the goddess through her gift of song at local and international festivals and conferences for over 40 years. She leads tours to sacred sites, offers a 3-year priestess training program through the Temple of the Global Goddess, and more recently, last year, convened the first international priestess convocation in Crete, with the second one planned for 2024. Anique is going to talk to us about creating the Motherworld, present and future matriarchies. Anique, I am excited and much blessed to be talking to you today. With an involvement in the goddess spiritual community for as long as you have been involved, no doubt you have so much wisdom that you can share with us. But for the time being, why don't we just focus on this concept of Motherworld? And for our audience, some of them may not be familiar with this term. So maybe you can just provide us with some of your interpretations, your insights, and what does this actually involve, especially for us in the 21st century?
Well, firstly, I just want to honour the fact that I'm on Wanneroo land, the peoples of the plains and hills of the Hunter Valley here in New South Wales. The Motherworld. The Motherworld is a concept that was midwifed by Kathy Jones of the Glastonbury goddess community. Kathy is a venerable soul, same age as I, 76 this year, and she started many, many years even before me. So she's been working diligently for the goddess in her service for over 50 years, I would say. Kathy's concept is that the world today has moved far, far away from the understandings of what it is to mother. We're not talking here in the biological sense, in terms of mothering, in terms of birthing children, rather about the power of creation. And the power of creation in terms of not only the future generations, which of course is incredibly important, but also about the creation of projects, ideas, concepts, ways of being, new ways walking that can embrace the values of mothering, which are primarily nurturing, being responsible, being ethical, being passionate and compassionate, and also being diligently responsible for unfolding what is needed in any particular moment. Of course, I could spend hours talking about the mother world concept, but essentially that's what it's about. It's about being conscious of our tremendous power as light beings in a physical body, our tremendous power to be able to manifest with the slightest amount of energy, just with the most positive thought process, we can manifest immediately anything we want to manifest. And as long as we hold on to that understanding, we can individually, but even more powerfully together, bring about change very quickly. And this is essentially what the mother world is all about.
So it's a concept that regardless of gender or regardless of how we identify ourselves, especially in this modern world where there's lots of fluidness when it comes to gender, it goes completely beyond that. Is that correct?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. There is, yeah, it's about, we are light beings. We need to keep remembering that. The envelope that we walk in is neither here nor there. We'll drop that in it. Just, it's like, if you remember the old printers, that came out, the dot matrix printers, when any document might have a billion little dots. We are one dot in the matrix of this life as a physical being. However, we are the whole document as a light being. And so understanding that and working through that understanding is what we need to move towards. And so that will eliminate all kinds of problems, that are associated with the ego identification with this physical expression that we are.
Wonderful. Yes, I certainly agree with this. And I do feel sometimes we get so caught up in labels and identifications that we forget that we are light beings, as you said, essences of spirit here on this physical plane. And beyond our ego self, there is a bigger plan that we all need to sort of get more engaged in and with. And a lot of this is coming back to how we walk upon this earth and see ourselves in the greater picture of things as well. So that's a really big concept, and stepping into this whole reclaiming or reconditioning our ways, our thinking of, as you said, mothering, what that actually means to us. So how would we start going about it as a collective consciousness?
It does begin with the individual. It has to, because we live such segregated lives in this world, in the patriarchy. The notions of the village are totally and utterly gone, unfortunately. So it does begin with the individual. And what you said in your introduction about we need to come back to living our lives in a spiritual way. In saying that, what I am saying, I don't know what others say when they say that, but when I say that, I say it's about being connected in every moment to that understanding that we need to be present so that we can be aware of what is happening in every moment, because each moment is just so complex. We make choices in every single moment. The fundamental choice to breathe is always there. But then after that, every single moment, which is 60 seconds, that's a long time, count to 60. Every single moment offers us incredible number of choices. So one of the fundamental choices I feel after breathing is to decide to sit in joy. That can be very, very hard for many people. There are many, many people today who are living with depression and anxiety. Is it any wonder? We won't go into that. However, choosing to live in joy, no matter what we happen to be feeling as a general sense of who we are at a particular time is a really political and courageous thing to do. Because if we can choose to be in joy, it opens up certain centers in the brain that are available to us that allow us to think, in a particular way. The best way that I feel that we can choose to be in joy is to chant. So I now come back to my goddess-given gift, which is at the root of it all, really. If we choose to do sacred practice every day, and for me, sacred practice is really, really simple. I light a candle. I say to Mother, Goddess, I am here. How can I serve you? And then I pay attention in the moment to what comes through. Now you'll notice behind me, I'm actually at the moment in my office. And because I can't get a good Wi-Fi down in the temple, I would have loved to be in the temple so I could show you my beautiful temple. But I'm in my office at the moment, and I have my office altar here, and I do sacred practice several times a day. If I feel any kind of feeling creeping in to my being that is in any way disconcerting, I stop what I'm doing and I chant. The candle is always lit from the morning on till I go to bed at night. I turn around to my, it's just this simple. I turn around to my altar and I begin to chant. And it brings me into my joy. When we are in our joy, it dissolves the ego self. So for me, the best way to begin bringing in the mother world as a collective is if we as individuals do our sacred practice every day. For me, it's a joy. If I didn't have so many other projects, and as you mentioned, it was so great to hear you say that, not for my ego, but just to remind me that I'm really, really busy. So for me, I would do sacred practice all day long because I love not only to chant, but I love to pray. For me, prayer has become a dirty word with people because they associate it with Christianity and other religions that perhaps are not as conducive to some of us. But for me, prayer is about being in conversation with Goddess. It's about coming to the center, knowing she is within me, that I am she is me, we are it, and having a conversation with that and seeing what comes through. And when I do that, it moves me back into focus, and the feelings, whatever they are, disappear. And it's so easy to lose center, Frances. I'm on my email virtually all day. I get hundreds of emails every day with all the projects that I'm on. I have to check in with Facebook because, again, with Facebook, I get messages like your message today, for example. I get messages all the time and I have to check in. And when we are checking in to these things, we can be in perfect joy. And then an email comes through which says, whatever it is. Generally, for me, it's when it comes from the patriarchy. Something about my bank account, something about this or that takes me completely out of creativity, into the mundanity of patriarchy, and I lose my center. So immediately I turn to my altar and I bring myself back. So sacred practice is not only helpful in that it keeps us healthy at every level, but it also enables us to get on, with what we're doing without getting sidetracked and becoming anxious or whatever else happens through living in the world.
That sounds wonderful. And as you mentioned, it's so easy, especially these days of social media, to get sidetracked. And I know I fall into that category as well. I spend all day, at the moment, it seems to be going round and round in circles on social media, answering questions or emails. But what you touched on is the simplicity of sacred practice. And I think we look at social media, in particular, there, say Instagram, and we see these elaborate altars or huge connections or alleged connections that people are portraying that they have with spirit or goddess. Yet, as you've just described it, it's something as simple as lighting a candle and being present in the moment, coming back to that sacred core that we all have within. So you, just following on from some of your many, many projects, the priestess convocation, because this is something new and exciting. It started it last year. Coming out of COVID, it must have been a huge challenge. So maybe if you could spend a few moments just talking a little bit more about it, what inspired you to create such an event?
Well, for many, many years, I've been inviting women, goddess women that I admire to come to Australia. The reason is that I've been blessed, you know, in my last incarnation, before I retired at 50, to devote myself fully in her service. You know, I was very well paid marketing consultant, so I was able to travel, and I went to many, many conferences whilst I was still wearing two hats, you know, the patriarchal hat, the goddess hat, and I would attend conferences, and I would meet the most extraordinary women who were teaching incredible things and bringing through, you know, an energy, a manner, you know, that I felt I needed to share with women who could not afford to travel. So I would invite women to come to Australia, and I would organize workshops and so on. And you will have observed over the years that I've brought many inspiring women like Vicky Noble, like Fiona Morgan, like Brooke Medicine Eagle, and the one that I'm going to talk about now is Max Dashu, because Max Dashu, and I really encourage all of you who are watching this video to Google Max and to go with her site, which is, I think it's, can't remember the name of it particularly.
Suppressed Histories, I think it is, yeah.
That's the one, yes. Maybe we can add that to the comments or something. But anyway, I love Max, and she and I are very close, and I invited her to come and do a tour of the East Coast with me. And while we were on tour, I'd already heard her talks. She did the same talks everywhere, which is fine. We all do that. And so I was already quite well versed with what she was talking about. And so I would sort of go into trance, you know, while she was talking, because the information was so rich. And there was a particular time when she was talking about Göbekli Tepe, which is the most ancient site in the world in Turkey. And when she was talking about that, even though I'd heard it at least 3 or 4 times before, something happened and I slipped through the veils of time. And I saw myself back in time, not there, but actually in Crete. And it was like it was a huge hall, and there were priestesses from all over the world. I knew that they were from all over the world, and they were all wearing their different costumes, their priestess garments from all over the world. And I could tell, you know, women from Africa, women from South America, women from Asia, women from the Americas, women from Australia, they were all there. Of course, this is a metaphor. It was a metaphor. But what I understood is that since time out of mind, priestesses have been gathering. Now, before the internet, we had to come together. And I knew that they were priestesses because they were all wearing what I'm calling a lunary. So this is the crescent moon necklace of the priestess that has been in every single culture. And they also had the crescent moon of the priestess on their foreheads, tattooed on their foreheads. And in this vision, they were moving around the room. And according to the lunary that they had, so mine has 3 spirals on it, which is the sign of the ceremonial high priestess. There were different signs in the lunaries. There were, you know, symbols for the astrologer. There were symbols for the one who took care of the growing of things. There was the healer, all sorts of different symbols, and I recognized them all. And in fact, what I did is, at the time, I actually did drawings of them in my journal there that I always had on my lap when I was with Max, because such a bounty of information I was writing all the time. And if you go to the Priestess Convocation website, you will see, if you click on the thing that says vision, the little tag that says vision, there is a picture of my journal with these lunaries, the drawings that I actually did in that moment. So I give you all this detail because it's important to understand that the vision that I had was so rich with detail and information that I really had to pay attention. I don't know about you, but I get visions all the time. They come and they go. They're the goddess's way of giving me opportunities to be creative. This is how we need to understand visions. It's not about being, you know, oogie boogie, I get visions. It's not about that. It's the goddess giving us opportunities to act in her service. So I paid attention. So I thought about all this, and I understood that she was calling to me to gather the priestesses. Now, why? Why gather the priestesses? I meditated on this for a long, long time. And I know that here in Australia in particular, we are incredibly isolated. In Europe, you can put on a backpack for 45 euros. You can hop across to Greece. You can hop across to Italy, to France, to England, to wherever you want, and meet with other priestesses if you want to do that. Attend their ceremonies, attend their rituals, their teachings, and so on. In Australia, it's very, very difficult. However, I understood that priestesses gathered long before patriarchy. Priestesses gathered when it was safe to gather, when it was normal to gather. And so for 5,000 years, since the decline of the temples, priestesses have not been gathering. And so it became clear to me that she wanted us to gather so that we'd cross-pollinate how we serve her. How do we serve her in our homelands? How do you do full moon rituals? How do you do the menarche ceremonies? How do you welcome a new life? How do you bless a temple? How do you ordain a priest? All these incredible ceremonies that we do or did all the time. Unfortunately, now we don't, but we did once. Everything was a ceremony. Cutting the vegetables was a ceremony. In Japan, this is still very alive. You know, the idea that even the most mundane act is a ceremony and a ritual. So priestesses would come together to cross-pollinate and share with each other how we did things in our ways and in our lands. And so it became clear to me that she wanted us to revive this tradition. And so, okay, I said, let's do it. If I can organize conferences here in Australia, why not somewhere else with the internet? It's really no big deal. At the time, I had an amazing group of priestesses supporting me. And then COVID happened and they all scattered to the winds. And so it happened that I ended up working on this convocation on my own. And this is what she wanted. Because my vision, Frances, is always huge. And not many women can sit within that. So it was a great blessing to work on my own and craft this convocation. And so in talking with many women, I did a lot of consultation. Because of COVID, there was time to do the consultation. And in my own personal world, this is why COVID happened. If I'd rushed on ahead and organized an event as mammoth as this, without the amount of thought and dedicated consultation that I did, it would not have been the incredible, amazing, splendiferous event that it was. And so what I did, as soon as we were able to travel again, I started to organize dreaming circles. And I had been invited, I'm always invited. This is not about ego, it's about the singing. People want my singing, and good on them. Why not? It's fantastic. So I had lots of places that I was going to, and everywhere that I went, I organized a dreaming circle. And what this was about, it was about asking women and men to share with me why. Why would they want to come to a convocation? And what I got most of all, it was about community. We wanted a global community. We wanted to be able to offer ceremonies and rituals to a large group. Now, as a priestess, you will understand the joy and pleasure it is to work with a group of priestesses and priests and to have over 100 people in the congregation. The energy, it's the energy that is built. You and I have both led ceremonies for small groups. It's hard work. When you have 100 souls feeding you with energy, it is amazing. It transports one to a completely other level. And so in doing these dreaming circles, this is what I understood, that every priestess that I talked to yearned for this opportunity to be able to work within such a large group energy. So I took everything on board. One of the main things that came out of the dreaming circles was we wanted to grieve what we'd lost. The second thing that we wanted to do, we wanted to create a new global community where we could each be able to access lots and lots of others who were like-hearted and like-minded. And thirdly, we wanted to celebrate. We wanted to have a good time together. So I took everything on board and I sat in meditation many, many, many a day and came up with a program that did just that. First, we honored our ancestors. And this was done by the Greek goddess temple. One of the gifts of the convocation was my meeting up with the Greek goddess temple and a wonderful young man called Pantelis, who is the priest. And he and his team of women, very interesting, a group of women led by a young man, he's only 30. They crafted the most extraordinary ceremony where we honored our ancestors, the ancient priestesses of old. It was amazing, Frances. And then we moved through a beautiful ceremony by priestesses and a priest from Los Angeles, the Honey Tribe, where we did a healing. And this was 7 days. So first day, second day, third day, we did a reclaiming of our ancient roots by honoring the witches that were burned. On the fourth day, we did a blood ceremony, honoring our power through the blood. And it was amazing how the men that were there held guardian space for us outside the tent. They weren't inside. This was sacred women's work, but they were outside holding space for us. And then they came in at the end and we honored them. And then on the fifth day, we did excursions along the way as well. Earlier on in the piece, we'd already gone to the temple at Malia and done an amazing water ceremony there, where we sent all our intentions out through the oceans of the world. Then on the sixth day, we went to Knossos and we did an amazing ceremony connecting us with the ancient priestesses there. And then on the Friday, we did, I can't remember, but we had also in the evening, we had events in the evening as well. And there was a sacred drama, which was just awesome. And then on the last day before the closing, we all came together and it was a group discussion where everybody who wanted to could stand up and speak about whatever they wanted to speak. I mean, the program is still up on the webpage, so you can go up and have a look. I think I got a few things mixed up, but it doesn't, you can forgive me, I'm 76, my memory's not so good. So it was just awesome, Frances, and everybody who came loved it so much. And it was incredibly affordable. That's the other thing. It doesn't have to cost a fortune. 7 days, it cost €650, which included the ticket, your accommodation, all your meals, all your drinks, including alcohol. That's just unheard of. So the people who came not only had a great time, but they felt they got really, really good value. So we're doing the same thing in 2024. We're going to stay at the same hotel. It'll be the same deal. The ticket price will include everything. And we're going to be meeting in Athens in April, actually. I'll be leading a tour to Egypt in March, and there's still 2 places left. So I invite anybody who'd like to come to please come. My tours are magical, lots of ceremony and chanting. And then from there, I'm going to Athens. And so on the 7th, I think it is, I'm holding a dreaming circle at the Greek goddess temple in Athens, and I want to do the same process again. What is it that the priestesses and the priests want to get out of the next convocation? Come and talk with me. And I'll be doing this wherever I travel next year, and also by Zoom, so that we again have community consultation, which is very, very important to me. And so that's essentially what the convocation is about. It's about being little bees and cross-pollinating. And it's so appropriate because the bee is so important in Crete.
Well, that sounds absolutely wonderful. And what I really like, especially in this age, we're coming out of COVID, of separation, you've touched on 3 main things that everybody, and again, goes beyond gender. You know, we need to be given the space where we can grieve. We need to then find the sense of community, and having a community that will accept us regardless of who we are. And it's just wonderful to hear, especially women's spirituality is starting to really take momentum, and it has probably over the last 10 years. And part of me sometimes feels a little bit sorry for the priests, for the men. Maybe they're feeling a little bit left behind because they too have suffered from the patriarchy. But to hear that you are creating a wonderful sacred space in the sense of connection, where regardless of gender or identification, anybody is welcome who feels the call. I think that is very needed in this world that we live in today. And it largely coming back to this sense of disconnect that we all are feeling on different levels. And in doing so, we can all then feel a sense of place again, which is wonderful to hear. Which sort of leads me into, we talk about the ancient priestesses, and we've had, what, 2,000, 5,000 odd years of patriarchy. So our whole world, our whole concept, the way we do things are completely different in our modern age. How is essential is priesthood with its priestess in our modern age?
I think it's, well, not I think, I know. I know how important it is to have priestesses, because not all of us are born to take the front, what I call, be the front person, What a priestess does, in my understanding, again, this is always my understanding only. My understanding is that a good priestess will attract a congregation that wants to be led. Now, not led in the patriarchal sense of led, but led through transformational experiences. When we live a mundane life, every day of our lives, going to work, having to pay the bills, all that sort of stuff, we need to have a break. We need to, if you like, go to church and be led through a transformational experience that will move us out of that mundanity into the more, I was going to say, exalted state. The English language is so limited, but the grace of connection to Goddess or God, or however you define the one, And that is what a good priestess does. Doesn't mean that she can read your aura, although she might well be able to do that. It doesn't mean that she has to know how to do the tarot or has to know what the astrological signs for everything is or all that. A good priestess with training, with the right training, has the tools to be able to create a sacred space that will allow the individual to do the work. The priestess does not do the work for the individual. All she does is to create the space for the individual then to find their way within that space to the intention of that particular gathering, that particular time, whether it's that regular time in temple that, I know there are some temples that are open every day, between, like the Glastonbury Goddess Temple is open every day between 2 and 6 o'clock in the evening. You go to the temple, you know that there will be a ceremony done there. You can sit there, and then after the ceremony, you can stay in that grace for as long as you like. So the priestess presides over the temple, and the temple can be something that pops up in somebody's living room. She presides over the temple and takes the congregation through that process. Now, the training that is required for that is essentially the clearing out of the vessel. Clearing the vessel so that we can at any moment drop into that space that is ego-free, that is anxiety-free, that is personal issues-free, so that we can channel whatever it is that she wants us to bring forward or to unfold in that moment. So we may well plan, I have done this so many times, I don't know if you have as well, we may plan a ceremony that might be about, okay, let's say abundance. Everybody's into abundance today. We plan a ceremony that's to do with abundance, and we work out what we're going to do and so on and so forth. But because we are a clear channel and she speaks through us, all of a sudden what happens? And it becomes a ceremony, actually, about self-esteem. And the priestess who is connected, a good priestess who is well trained, who has cleared the channel, will not allow the ego to step back in and say, well, no, we're supposed to be doing something about abundance here. No, she will flow with the inspiration and unfold whatever is needed in that moment. Now, that training, and I'd love to go to the training, but that's a whole other interview. That training, in my opinion, cannot happen in a weekend. It cannot happen in a workshop. It cannot happen in a year. It takes a long time. I trained for 13 years to be a priestess before I felt ready to be ordained. You need to understand ceremony and ritual, the difference thereof between. We need to understand the elements really, really deeply, what they are, what it means. We need to understand the different phases of the moon. We need to understand the solstices. There is so much, Frances. And it breaks my heart when I hear about weekend workshops where a woman becomes a priestess after a weekend. I can't say any more than that. However, the need for priestessing in the world is really, really important. Just as it was, in the Christian religion and in all the other religions, it was important for people to go to church. It's important for Muslims to go to the temple. It's important for all of us to have that time of connection, because that's all it is. The connection with the higher is the connection with ourselves. And we can never change the world until we're connected to ourselves. It's impossible. How can we? So I'm passionate about training priestesses, and I'm passionate about the women who come to me to be trained. And I hope that I can continue to do it for a long, long time. I'm actually taking sabbatical from priestess training next year, 2023. I'm just finishing up this year. My last group of priestesses will be ordained this year. And I'll take a break next year because there's just so much that I need to do. And then we'll pick up again in 2024. But the need for the priestess in the 21st century, even more than ever.
Right. And just sort of moving on from that, where do men or transgender, non-binary, where do they fit in? Is there a role for them? Is there a place for them in the temples as well?
Absolutely. Their role is exactly the same. Exactly the same. Now, Pantelis in Greece is doing a wonderful priestess training. Unfortunately, no men are turning up, only priestesses, But absolutely, everyone, no matter who we are, no matter how we identify, we have to be part of that process in temple. Absolutely. The men, those who identify as men, are particularly important. The transgender women are part of the sisterhood, but the men are particularly important because it is the men that can protect us. Within a patriarchy, they have a really important role in protecting us and being involved in the unfolding of the guardianship of the temple. Now, I have, as you know, I have a wife, Debbie, and she's very, she's strong. She's, she identifies through that masculinity that she carries so beautifully. And she's the guardian of our temple. And she does that. That's what she does. She protects us. She guards the temple. In a sense, she plays the part of the male, in the temple. And it's absolutely necessary for us. So it has to be that balance there. Absolutely.
I think we're coming back to what I mentioned earlier. We get so hooked up on labels, and the labels that we have worn or that we've had instilled upon us for so long, that we need to move beyond that. There's a place always for everybody and different roles, and it really doesn't matter how you identify with these days. The work of the goddess, of the divine feminine, of Mother Earth, our ancestors, connecting to that sacred inspiration, that spirit, however we identify with, is just as important and as urgent today as it always has been, and probably even more so because we're so disconnected from everything, the sacredness.
Yes,
and it comes it comes back to what you said right at the beginning, that with that initial connection is lighting a candle, constructing maybe a simple little altar so we can remind ourselves on a regular basis to come back and hold sacred space, even if it's just for us.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yes.
This is really wonderful. And I could talk with you for hours and hours, and with your years of experience and so much that you have happening. I wonder you have a well-deserved break this year, 2023. But I want to get on to the next part, and we're almost out of time. And first, thank you for what you have shared with us. And as I said, there's so much more. Definitely we'll be linking your website into contact below, and also to Max's website, because her website is very interesting for people who haven't explored the role of the feminine, the role of the women throughout ancient history and even modern history, how it's been suppressed. But I wanted to make sure that everybody in the audience knows of this very generous gift that you have for us. And it's one that I think how we connected was through your gift of song. So would you like to talk a little bit about that?
Oh, well, I was born singing. My mother tells me I came out of the womb singing, not crying. I've been singing since I was 3 years old, basically. And I remember, well, not remember, the stories my mother told about how, whenever I would sing for the family, how there wasn't a dry eye in the house and so on. So I learned from a very early age that singing was what I had to give to the world. And so I moved through many incarnations. When I was younger, I was a jazz singer and very successful, a club singer back in the days when there were lots of clubs here in Australia. And then at 50, I retired from that style of singing and devoted myself to her, and original goddess music started to come through. And my first CD, Invoking the Goddess, which is still available, took me everywhere around the world. It was primarily a CD of goddess chants with one celebratory goddess song at the end. And it took me to the Glastonbury Goddess Conference, where there were many, gosh, it was a huge conference, over 500 people. And of course, singing there exposed me to people from all over Europe primarily. And then I got invited to their conferences and so on and so on. So now, all these years later, I've written 6 CDs of original goddess music, and I still perform them all over the world. I love singing. Singing is my go-to place for healing. It's my own personal healing tool. And I can't imagine my life if I wasn't able to sing. And somebody asked me very recently, actually, asked me, well, if you weren't Anique Radiant Heart, who would you be? And I thought, what an interesting question. And I thought to myself, well, I think I'd be somebody down at the local station with a little hat on the ground, singing and asking for whatever coins you want to give me, really. I mean, because when you whittle it right down, what are titles, as you say? What are titles? What is the personality? It's nothing. It's basically, I just want to sing. I want people to enjoy my singing. I hope it brings them healing and peace. And I hope that I can keep singing till the day I die. And I pray that I will anticipate, I know I will anticipate when I'm ready to pass. And I pray that those that have loved my music will gather around me and sing my music to me as I pass over.
Oh, that's wonderful. And for our audience, Anique is very generously offering a copy of her original goddess music CDs, 6 of them. And the link will be below those who are wanting to take her up on this really generous offer. So, Anique, thank you very much for speaking with me today. It's been absolutely wonderful, inspiring having you here. And thank you so much again for sharing all your wisdom with us.
Frances, I want to thank you so much for all the work that you have done in her service. mammoth body of work that you have. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for connecting us. And I look forward to seeing all the other interviews when this event takes place. Thank you. It's been a pleasure to be here.
Thank you very much. It's my pleasure. So to everybody here, now Talali, thank you. I hope you have enjoyed this interview with Anique as much as I have. And I look forward to seeing you in the next interview. Blessing.